"There's a camera in your room," the janitor whispered. Then the mafia boss exposed his fiancée. Riverton was a city that never truly slept, but it certainly lowered its voice after midnight. From the back seat of the town car, Maya Lane watched the streak of streetlights paint long, blurry lines across the tinted glass. She rubbed her temples, trying to massage away the headache that had been building since 10 in the morning. Being an event planner was stressful enough without the added weight of being the fiancé of Damien Viscari. Most people in Riverton knew the name Viscari. It appeared on the sides of construction trucks, above the doors of the city's most exclusive nightclubs, and on the donor plaques of the local children's hospital. But the people who really knew the name spoke it in hushed tones, usually accompanied by a nervous glance over their shoulder. They knew that the cement pouring at the construction sites sometimes covered secrets, and that the back rooms of those nightclubs hosted meetings that decided the fate of the city's underworld. Maya let out a long breath as the car turned into the private underground garage of the Viscari Tower. The driver, a silent man with a neck as thick as a tree trunk, nodded to the security team stationed at the gate. The heavy steel grate rolled up with a mechanical hum. Home, or at least the fortress she now called home. She thanked the driver and made her way to the private elevator. She pressed her thumb against the biometric scanner. A soft beep signaled approval, and the doors slid open. This was her life now. Fingerprint scanners, bodyguards who looked at her like she was a package to be delivered, and late-night deliveries of files that Damien would read with a glass of whiskey in hand and a gun on the desk, despite the luxury. Maya tried to keep her grip on reality. She still took the subway when she could manage to slip away without a security detail. She still texted her best friend Jenna about bad reality television shows. She still worked 12-hour days coordinating weddings for brides who cried over the wrong shade of peony pink. She refused to let the Viscari money or the Viscari darkness swallow her whole. The elevator opened directly into the penthouse foyer. It was quiet, the kind of silence that felt expensive. The marble floors gleamed under the recessed lighting. Maya kicked off her heels, carrying them by the straps as she walked down the long hallway toward the master suite. She passed the janitorial closet just as the door clicked open. "Mister?" Alvarez stepped out. He was a small man, his back permanently curved into a question mark after decades of scrubbing floors and polishing brass. He held a mop bucket in one hand, his knuckles knobby and arthritic. He had always been kind to Maya, often saving her the best pastries from the morning delivery or watering her plants when she forgot. "Mr. Alvarez," Maya said, offering him a tired smile. "It is late. You should be home resting." The old man froze. His eyes darted toward the ceiling cameras, then down the hall toward Damien's study. He looked terrified. He set the bucket down with a trembling hand and took a step closer to her. "Miss Lane," he whispered. Maya frowned, sensing the shift in the air. "Is everything okay?" He looked around again, checking the empty corridor. Then he leaned in close. Smelling of lemon polish and fear, "There is a camera in your room," he breathed, the words barely audible. Maya blinked, her brain struggling to process the sentence. "What? In your bedroom, mister?" Alvarez whispered urgently, his eyes wide and watery. "I saw men. 2 days ago. They were not mister. Damien's men. They wore maintenance uniforms, but their boots were too clean. I saw them coming out of your suite when you were at work. I checked the vent, the one above the dresser. There is wiring." A cold sensation, like ice water, poured down Maya's spine. She gripped her shoes tighter. "Mr. Alvarez, are you sure? Maybe it was a security upgrade. Damien upgrades the system all the time. Mister?" Alvarez shook his head vigorously. No, Miss Lane, I know the security team. These were strangers, and they laughed. I heard them laughing about what they would see." The nausea hit her instantly, a violent wave of sickness that made her stomach turn over. "Please," the old man begged, stepping back and grabbing his mop handle. "Do not say I told you. They will hurt me. But I could not let you sleep in there another night." Maya nodded numbly. Go home, mister. Alvarez, I will not say a word." She watched him shuffle away toward the service elevator, his head bowed low. Once he was gone, Maya dropped her shoes on the marble floor. The sharp clatter echoed, but she did not care. She turned and ran toward the bedroom. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic rhythm of panic. She burst into the master suite. It was a massive room, decorated in cool grays and deep blues, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Riverton skyline. It was supposed to be her sanctuary, the one place where she could take off the armor of being the perfect fiancée and just be Maya. She scanned the room, her breath coming in short, shallow gasps. The bed, the vanity, the closet, the vent. Mr. Alvarez had said the vent above the dresser. Maya dragged a heavy velvet ottoman over to the dresser. She climbed onto it, her hands shaking so badly she almost lost her balance. She reached up to the decorative brass grate of the ventilation cover. It looked normal. Perfectly normal. She pulled the flashlight feature up on her phone and shined it through the slats. At first, she saw nothing but dust and darkness. She shifted the angle of the light. There, a glint, a tiny circular reflection that did not belong to galvanized steel or aluminum ductwork. It was a lens, a glass eye staring right back at her. Maya clamped her hand over her mouth to stifle a scream. She stumbled down from the ottoman, her legs giving way. She sat hard on the floor, staring up at the vent. She thought about the last 2 days. She had changed her clothes in front of that dresser. She had slept in that bed, sometimes wearing nothing but an oversized t-shirt. Sometimes nothing at all. She had cried on that bed yesterday morning after a particularly brutal phone call with a vendor. She had FaceTimed Jenna, laughing and dancing around the room to a new pop song. Someone had watched. Someone had recorded it. The violation felt physical, like dirty hands gripping her skin. She felt exposed, stripped bare in the worst possible way. Then, the fear turned into something sharper. Anger. She stood up. The tremors in her hands stopped, replaced by clenched fists. She marched out of the bedroom, down the hall, and toward the double oak doors of Damien's home office. She did not knock. She threw the doors open. Damien Viscari was sitting behind his massive mahogany desk, the city lights framing his silhouette. He was in his shirt sleeves, his tie undone, a tumbler of amber liquid near his hand. He was speaking into a secure phone, his voice low and dangerous. "We handle it tonight," Damien was saying. "No loose ends. I want the shipment secured by—" He stopped as the doors banged against the walls. He looked up, his dark eyes narrowing instantly. He held up a hand to Maya, signaling her to wait, and spoke into the phone again. "Call you back." He set the phone down and looked at her. His face was a mask of hard angles and exhaustion. "Maya, I am in the middle of—" "There is a camera in our bedroom," she announced, her voice trembling with rage. Damien froze. The irritation vanished from his face, replaced by a razor-sharp alertness. "What did you say?" "There is a camera," Maya repeated, walking toward his desk, hidden in the vent, pointed right at the bed, pointed right at where I dress, where I sleep. Damien stood up slowly. His eyes did not soften. Instead, they went cold, calculating. He wasn't looking at her as a fiancée. He was looking at her as a boss assessing a security breach. "Who put it there?" he asked, his voice devoid of emotion. Maya let out a bitter laugh. "I was hoping you could tell me. This is your fortress. Damien, your security. Your men scan my groceries. They check my purse. How does a camera get installed in the master bedroom without you knowing?" Damien walked around the desk, closing the distance between them. He did not reach out to touch her. He stopped 3 feet away, his body tense. "Who has been in the room?" "Maya," he demanded, aside from the cleaning staff. "Who have you had over?" Maya recoiled as if he had slapped her. "Excuse me?" "You have friends over," Damien said, his voice rising slightly. "Your sister came by last week. That event coordinator you work with was here on Tuesday." "Are you blaming me?" Maya shouted. "You think I let someone in to spy on us? To spy on me? I need to know who had access," Damien roared back. "I am the victim here," Maya screamed, tears finally spilling over. She pointed a shaking finger at the door. "I am the one being watched. I am the one who has been naked in front of a stranger's lens, and your first reaction is to interrogate me? To ask who I have been talking to?" Damien stared at her. His chest heaved with the force of his own sudden anger. But beneath it, he saw the terror in her eyes. He saw the way she was hugging herself, trying to cover her body even though she was fully dressed in a coat and jeans. He saw the humiliation burning her cheeks red. The logic in his brain, the part of him that ran the Vescari outfit, the part that looked for traitors and weaknesses, suddenly shut down. He looked at his fiancée. She wasn't a suspect. She was Maya. And she was terrified. Damien let out a curse, a harsh sound in Italian, and closed the remaining distance. Maya flinched, expecting more accusations, but he did not yell. He reached out and cupped her face in both of his large hands. His thumbs brushed away the angry tears tracking down her cheeks. "I am sorry," he rasped, his voice dropping to a rough whisper. "I am sorry, Maya." Maya's anger crumbled, leaving only the raw fear exposed. She gripped his wrists, her fingers digging into his skin. "I feel sick. Damien, I feel like they are still watching. Right now." "No," he said firmly, his dark eyes locking onto hers. "No one is watching you. Not anymore." He pulled her into him. It wasn't a gentle hug. It was a collision. Maya buried her face in the crook of his neck, inhaling the scent of him, expensive tobacco, crisp cotton, and the faint metallic tang of the city. She needed to feel solid ground, and for all his faults, Damien Vescari was the most solid thing on earth. Damien wrapped his arms around her waist, crushing her against him as if he could physically shield her from the invisible eyes. He could feel her trembling against his chest. The rage that surged through him then was terrifying. He wanted to burn the city down. He wanted to find the eyes that had looked at her and gouge them out. "I swear to you," he whispered into her hair, his lips brushing her ear, "I will tear apart the person who did this. No one touches my privacy. No one touches you." Maya looked up at him, her eyes searching his. "Do you believe me, that I didn't know?" Damien looked down at her. The suspicion was gone, burned away by her distress. "Yes," he said, "I believe you." He kissed her then. It wasn't a sweet kiss. It was hard and desperate, fueled by the adrenaline of the threat and the need to reaffirm possession. Maya kissed him back with equal force, her hands tangling in the hair at the nape of his neck. She needed to know that she belonged to him, not to the voyeur in the vent. She needed to know that this bond was real, that his power could protect her. Damien walked her backward, not breaking the kiss, guiding her out of the office and back down the hallway. "Where are we going?" she breathless asked when he pulled back for air. "To the room," he said, his jaw set. Maya hesitated, panic flaring in her eyes. "Damien, I can't. The camera. We are not going to hide from it," Damien growled softly. "We are going to kill it." He led her into the bedroom. The air felt heavy, charged with the knowledge of the hidden device. Maya stopped in the doorway, unable to cross the threshold. Damien did not hesitate. He strode to the dresser, his movements predatory and fluid. He looked up at the vent, his expression deadly. He did not waste time looking for the glint. He shrugged off his suit jacket, the fine Italian silk rustling in the silence. With a fluid motion, he tossed the jacket upward. He was tall enough that he barely had to jump. He jammed the fabric into the decorative grill of the vent, twisting it until it blocked the airflow and, more importantly, the view. The lens was covered. The eye was blinded. Damien turned back to Maya. He stood in the center of the room, his white shirt glowing in the dim light coming from the city outside. He held his hands out to her. "It is just us now," he said. Maya let out a sob that was half laugh, half cry, and ran to him. He caught her, lifting her slightly off the floor. The fear was still there, lurking in the corners of her mind, but Damien's presence was pushing it back. He carried her to the bed, laying her down with a gentleness that belied the violence inherent in his world. He hovered over her, his weight supported on his elbows, creating a canopy of safety. "Look at me," he commanded softly. Maya looked up. His face was inches from hers. "This is ours," Damien said. his thumb tracing the line of her jaw. "This room, this bed, you, all mine. No one else gets to see this." He kissed her again, slower this time. He took his time, his lips moving over hers with deliberate, claiming pressure. Maya arched into him, the tension in her muscles slowly unspooling. The world outside the windows, the mafia, the threats, the hidden cameras, faded into a blur. There was only the heat of his skin, the rough calluses on his palms, and the steady, heavy beat of his heart against hers. They did not undress fully. The air still felt too vulnerable, too exposed despite the covered vent. But the intimacy was profound. Damien kissed the pulse at her throat, his hand splayed wide over her stomach, grounding her. Maya clung to his shoulders, focusing on the rhythm of his breathing. They lay tangled together, reclaiming the space inch by inch, replacing the memory of violation with the reality of their connection. For a long time, there was only the sound of their breathing and the distant hum of the city. Eventually, the adrenaline faded, leaving a cold clarity in its wake. Damien rolled onto his back, pulling Maya against his side. She rested her head on his chest, listening to his heart rate slow down, though the tension in his arm never left. Damien reached for his phone on the nightstand. He dialed a number. "Ethan," Damien said. His voice was back to being ice-cold steel. "Get to the penthouse. Bring the sweeper gear. All of it." He hung up without waiting for a response. Maya traced the pattern of the buttons on his shirt. "Do you think it is your enemies?" she asked quietly. "The Lachlan crew?" Damien stared up at the ceiling, his eyes dark. "The Lachlan crew uses brute force. They burn down warehouses. They shoot out tires. This is psychological. This is intimate." He tightened his arm around her. 20 minutes later, the bedroom was a flurry of activity, though it was a silent, efficient kind of chaos. Ethan Cole, Damien's head of technology, moved with the precision of a surgeon. He was a young man with sharp features and eyes that seemed to analyze code even when he was looking at a wall. Maya sat in a chair in the corner, wrapped in a thick robe, while Damien stood by the door, his arms crossed, watching Ethan work. Ethan had removed the vent cover. He held a small black device in his gloved hand. It was no bigger than a matchbox, with a thin wire antenna trailing from it. "Well?" Damien asked, the single word hanging heavy in the room. Ethan turned the device over in his hands. He adjusted his glasses. "It is high-end," Ethan said, "military grade or close to it. It has its own power source, so it didn't need to be spliced into the building's grid. That is why our surge detectors didn't pick it up." "Is it recording to a cloud?" Damien asked. "No," Ethan said. "It is a transmitter, short range. Whoever is watching this, they have to be within a 2-mile radius to pick up the signal." Maya shivered, pulling the robe tighter. "And the install?" Damien asked. Ethan looked up, his expression grim. "Professional. Very clean. No scratches on the screws. No dust disturbed on the sill. Whoever placed this knew exactly how to get into the vent system without triggering the pressure sensors." Ethan hesitated, then looked at Damien. "Boss, this wasn't a break-in. The alarm log is empty. The window sensors were never tripped." Damien's jaw tightened until a muscle feathered in his cheek. "What are you saying, Ethan?" "I am saying," Ethan replied quietly, placing the camera into an evidence bag, "that whoever planted this didn't need to break in. They walked in. They had a code, or they had a key." Maya looked at Damien. He wasn't looking at her anymore. He was looking at the black void of the open vent. His eyes filled with a terrifying realization. The threat wasn't just outside the walls, it was inside the house. The silence in the room was deafening, broken only by the zip of the evidence bag sealing shut. The smoke in Damien Vescari's private conference room hung low and heavy, a gray cloud that refused to dissipate despite the hum of the high-end air purifiers. It was 3 a.m. The city of Riverton was finally quiet, but inside the Vescari stronghold, the noise was deafeningly silent. Damien stood at the head of the heavy oak table. He had not slept. His eyes felt like they were packed with sand, and his shirt, usually pressed to perfection, was wrinkled at the elbows. He slammed his hand down on the wood, the sound cracking through the room like a gunshot. "Someone walked into my home," Damien growled, his voice a low rumble that vibrated in the chests of the 3 men sitting before him. "Someone walked into the bedroom where I sleep with my fiancé. They installed a transmitter. They left without tripping a single alarm. And you are telling me that none of you know how—" Ethan Cole, the tech expert, looked pale. He tapped nervously on his laptop, his eyes darting between the screen and Damien. "Boss, the logs are clean. I have run the diagnostics 3 times. The loop on the camera feed wasn't a hack from the outside. It was authorized. Someone used a master code to freeze the frame for 10 minutes while they went in. Who has the master codes?" Damien demanded. Ethan swallowed hard. "You, me, Rory, and Luca." Damien's eyes slid to the man sitting at the far end of the table. Luca Vescari, his cousin, leaned back in his leather chair with a casual air that felt out of place in the charged atmosphere. Luca was handsome in a sharp, predatory way, with the same dark eyes as Damien, but none of the restraint. "Don't look at me, cousin," Luca said smoothly, holding up his hands. "I was at the track all week. You can check my receipts. Besides, why would I want to watch you sleep? I have better things to do." "Then how?" Damien asked. Luca shrugged, picking a piece of lint off his jacket. "Maybe it wasn't a break-in. Damien, maybe the door was open from the inside." Damien went still. "Watch your mouth. I am just saying," Luca continued, his voice dropping to a sympathetic, poisonous whisper. "Maya is a civilian. She's from a different world. Maybe an old boyfriend came by. Maybe she invited someone over for a drink and he left a little souvenir. You know how women get when they feel neglected. You've been working late a lot. She didn't know it was there," Damien said, though the denial came out tighter than he intended. "She found it. She came to me. Or she found it and realized she got caught, so she played the victim before you found it yourself," Luca suggested. "It is the smart play." "Shut up," Rory grunted. Rory, the enforcer, was a man of few words and immense loyalty. He glared at Luca. "Maya is good people. She wouldn't cross the boss." Luca smiled thinly. "Everyone is good people until the envelope gets thick enough, or until the secrets get too heavy. I am just saying, we should look at her guest list, not just the alarm logs." Damien stared at his cousin, hatred coiling in his gut, but beneath the anger, a tiny cold hook of doubt snagged his mind. He remembered how Maya had looked when she found the camera. Terrified. Yes, but could it be performance? In his world, everyone was an actor. Even the ones you loved. "Find the signal," Damien ordered, ending the meeting abruptly. "And Rory, put a detail on Maya. Heavy. I don't care if she likes it. No one gets within 10 feet of her without me knowing their blood type." The next morning, Maya tried to rebuild the walls of her normal life. She stood in front of the mirror in the guest bathroom. She couldn't bring herself to use the master bath yet, and applied her makeup with a steady hand, masking the dark circles under her eyes. She was an event planner. Her job was to create illusions of perfection. She could do this. But as she walked into the lobby of her office building downtown, the illusion shattered. 2 massive men in dark suits, wearing earpieces that were painfully obvious, fell into step behind her. "Excuse me," Maya said, stopping in the middle of the atrium. "You cannot come up." "Mr. Vescari's orders." "Ma'am," the taller one said. He did not smile. He looked like he was carved out of granite. "We stay close." Maya felt the eyes of the receptionist and the security guard on her. Heat rushed to her face. "I have client meetings. You will scare them." "We will be discreet," the guard said, though there was nothing discreet about a man who weighed 250 pounds and had a scar running through his eyebrow. By noon, Maya wanted to scream. The guard stood directly outside the glass walls of her office. Every time a client came in to discuss floral arrangements or seating charts, they had to walk past the wall of muscle. Maya saw the nervous glances. She saw a prospective client, a wealthy mother of the bride, clutch her purse tighter and cut the meeting short. It was suffocating. At 1 o'clock, she fled to the break room, needing to hear a friendly voice. She called Jenna. "I think I am losing my mind," Maya whispered into the phone, huddled in the corner near the vending machine. "What happened?" Jenna asked. Did he forget an anniversary? Maya laughed, a brittle, dry sound. I wish. He is just controlling. Jenna, I know he worries about me, but it is too much. I have 2 bodyguards standing outside my door like I am the president. My clients think I am running a drug cartel or something. Maya bit her lip, realizing how close to the truth that was. She had never told Jenna the full extent of Damien's business. To Jenna, Damien was just a wealthy, intense construction mogul with a jealous streak. Is it worth it? Jenna asked softly. I mean, the guy is gorgeous and he clearly worships you, but do you feel safe? Maya looked through the break room window. She saw the guards. She thought about the camera in the vent. She thought about Damien's cold eyes when he had first asked her who she had been talking to. I don't know, Maya admitted, her voice trembling. Sometimes I feel like the safest person in the world, and sometimes I feel like I'm just a bird in a very expensive cage. That evening, the tension in the penthouse was thick enough to choke on. Damien had returned home early, but he hadn't come to find her. He had gone straight to his study. Maya sat on the living room sofa, her laptop open, pretending to work. She was angry. She was humiliated by the scene at her office, and she was exhausted from the constant paranoia of wondering if another lens was hidden in the crown molding or the lampshades. Her laptop pinged, a new email. It wasn't from a client. The sender field was blank, a string of randomized characters that looked like gibberish. Curiosity warred with dread. Maya clicked it open. There was no text in the body of the email, just an attachment, a single image file. Her finger hovered over the trackpad. She clicked. The image filled her screen, and the air left her lungs in a sharp whoosh. It was a still frame from the hidden camera. It was grainy, the lighting low, but it was unmistakably her bedroom. Maya was sitting on the edge of the bed. She was wearing her silk robe, the one she only wore when she was alone with Damien, but she wasn't alone in the picture. At the very edge of the frame, blurred but distinct, was the figure of a man. He was standing with his back to the camera, his face obscured by motion blur and pixelation. He was wearing a dark leather jacket with a distinctive white stripe down the shoulder. Maya stared at the screen. She didn't own a leather jacket like that. Damien didn't own a jacket like that. She had never had a man in the room. The subject line of the email seemed to burn into her retinas. Ask him if he trusts you now. Maya, Damien's voice came from behind her. She jumped, slamming the laptop shut. The guilt was instant and irrational. She hadn't done anything, but the photo made it look like a sin. Damien walked around the sofa. He looked tired. His tie loosened, his sleeves rolled up to reveal the tattoos on his forearms. Why did you close it? It was spam, Maya stammered. Damien held out his hand. Open it, Damien, please. Open it, Maya. She opened the laptop. Damien looked at the screen. The silence that followed was terrifying. It wasn't the silence of peace. It was the silence of a fuse burning down. Damien leaned in, his eyes scanning every pixel of the image. He saw Maya on the bed. He saw the robe, and then his eyes locked on the blurry figure. He recognized the jacket, or he thought he did. It was the style worn by the lieutenants of the Lachlan crew, a rival, an enemy. His face went gray. He straightened up, stepping back from her as if she were contagious. Who is he? Damien asked. His voice was dead. There was no one there, Maya cried. Standing up, Damien, look at the timestamp, look at the date. That was Tuesday. I was alone on Tuesday. I was reading a book. The camera doesn't lie. Maya, Damien said, that is a man. In our bedroom. While you are in your robe. It is doctored. It has to be, Maya shouted, tears springing to her eyes. Why won't you believe me? Because that jacket belongs to a man who wants to put a bullet in my head. Damien roared, his controls snapping. Maya recoiled. You think I am cheating on you? With your enemy? I think people do stupid things when they are scared, Damien yelled. I think you have been pulling away from me for months. I think you hate this life. And maybe you found someone who promised you a way out. Maya stared at him, her heart breaking into jagged pieces. Is that what you think of me, after everything? You think I am a traitor? I think I need proof, Damien countered. You need proof that I love you? Maya asked, her voice dropping to a whisper. She wiped her face aggressively. Fine. You want to treat me like a suspect? Go ahead, but I am not staying here to be interrogated. She turned and marched toward the door. Maya, stop, Damien barked. She didn't stop. She grabbed her purse from the entry table. Damien moved faster than thought. He crossed the room in 3 long strides and caught her wrist just as she reached for the door handle. You do not walk out on me, he snarled. Not with this hanging over us. Let me go, Maya screamed. Twisting in his grip, Damien looked down at her struggling form. He saw the genuine terror in her eyes, not the guilt of a conspirator, but the hurt of a woman betrayed by the man who was supposed to protect her. The realization hit him like a physical blow. He was hurting her. He was doing exactly what the enemy wanted. He released her wrist instantly, stepping back with his hands raised. I am sorry. I didn't mean to grab you. Maya didn't leave. She stood there, chest heaving, rubbing her wrist. She looked at him. Really looked at him, seeing the man beneath the monster he was trying to be. You are so afraid, she said, her voice shaking. You are so afraid of losing control that you are destroying the only real thing you have. Damien closed his eyes for a second, fighting the war inside his head. I don't know how to do this. Maya, I don't know how to love you without owning everything around you. It is the only way I know how to keep you safe. That isn't safety, Damien, Maya said, stepping closer to him, her anger morphing into a desperate need to make him understand. That is a prison. She pushed her hands against his chest. Look at me. Not at the evidence. Not at the photos. Look at me. Who am I? Damien opened his eyes. He looked at her. He saw the woman who made him coffee in the morning, the woman who rubbed his back when the stress gave him migraines, the woman who stayed, even when she knew what he was. You are my life, he choked out. Then fight for me. Not against me, she cried. The space between them vanished. It wasn't a gentle embrace, it was a collision of desperate needs. Damien grabbed her waist, pulling her flush against him, burying his face in her neck. He inhaled sharply, as if he were drowning and she was oxygen. Maya wrapped her arms around his neck, her fingers twisting into his hair, pulling him down. Their mouths met in a clash of teeth and lips, a kiss that tasted of salt and fury and terrifying vulnerability. Damien backed her up until she hit the wall of the foyer. He didn't pin her, he leaned into her, his body shielding hers, his hands roaming over her back, clutching the fabric of her blouse as if checking to make sure she was real, that she wasn't a digital manipulation. Maya kissed him back with everything she had, pouring all her fear and frustration into the contact. She needed to feel his weight. She needed to feel the man, not the boss. I didn't do it. She gasped against his mouth. I know, Damien whispered roughly, kissing her jaw, her cheek, her eyelids. I know, I am losing my mind. Maya, the thought of someone else near you, it breaks my brain. Then stop looking at the pictures and look at me, she commanded softly, pulling his face back to hers. They stood there for a long time, pressed together against the wall, not moving to the bedroom, just holding each other in the entryway. The physical closeness was a balm to the open wounds the argument had inflicted. Damien rested his forehead against hers, their breathing slowly syncing up. His hands stopped gripping and started soothing, long strokes down her spine that made her shudder. I believe you, Damien said finally. His voice was steady again. I swear to you, Maya, I believe you until they bring me something I can touch. He pulled back, smoothing her hair. But I have to know where that picture came from. He turned away, the moment of vulnerability snapping shut like a vault door. Ethan, he bellowed toward the hallway. Maya leaned against the wall, feeling cold now that he had moved away. Ethan appeared from the deeper recesses of the penthouse, looking like he hadn't slept in a week. Trace the email, Damien ordered, his voice clipped and professional. Dissect that image. I want to know every metadata tag. I want to know if that jacket was photoshopped in. And Rory? Rory stepped out of the shadows of the kitchen. Go downstairs, Damien said, his voice lowering to a dangerous pitch. Talk to the janitor, Alvarez, and talk to the night shift maintenance crew. Squeeze them. I don't care if they are old men. If they saw something and didn't speak up, they are complicit. Find out who has been on this floor." Maya froze. She watched Damien's back. He had just held her and promised he believed her. But now, watching him issue orders, she realized the investigation was still on. He was still hunting, and even though he said he believed her, he was tearing apart her world to verify it. He trusts me, she thought, a bitter taste in her mouth. But he trusts his paranoia more. 2 hours later, Maya needed air. The penthouse felt like a submarine running out of oxygen. She told Damien she was going to get a bottle of water from the kitchen, but instead, she slipped out the service entrance. She needed to find Mr. Alvarez. If Rory got to him first, Rory didn't know how to be gentle. Rory broke fingers to get answers. She took the service elevator down to the basement levels, where the building staff had their lockers and break rooms. The hallways here were concrete, lit by buzzing fluorescent tubes. She turned a corner and nearly collided with a cart. "Mr. Alvarez," she gasped. The old man jumped, clutching his chest. "Miss Lane, you should not be down here." "Mr. Alvarez, listen to me," Maya said urgently, grabbing his arm. "Damien's men are coming to talk to you. You have to tell them the truth. Tell them about the men you saw." "Mr. Alvarez looked terrified. His face was gray, and sweat beaded on his upper lip. I cannot, Miss Lane." "Why?" Maya asked, shaking him gently. "They will help you. Damien will protect you." "Mr. Alvarez looked over his shoulder. No, he will not. The men, the ones who were in your room, they came back. They know I saw them." "Who are they?" Maya pleaded. "Mr. Alvarez swallowed hard. They came today, in the garage. They asked about your schedule. They asked when you leave for work. They told me if I say a word to Mr. Vescari, my grandson, he will not make it home from school." Maya's blood ran cold. "Mr. Alvarez, you have to tell me. Who are they?" Before he could answer, headlights swept across the glass doors at the end of the service corridor. A vehicle had pulled up in the loading bay right outside. It was a black SUV. Tinted windows, no license plates. "Mr. Alvarez gasped and stumbled back, knocking over a stack of cleaning supplies. "They are here." Maya stared at the vehicle. The engine was idling, a low, menacing growl. Suddenly, the door behind Maya burst open. It wasn't the men from the SUV. It was Damien's driver, Frank. He looked frantic. "Miss Lane." Frank barked, "We have to go. Now." He didn't wait for her to agree. He grabbed her arm, hustling her away from the glass doors and back toward the elevators. "Frank, wait, Mr. Alvarez, we have to move." "Ma'am," Frank yelled, pulling her into the elevator and hitting the button for the penthouse. "Boss is on the line." He shoved a phone into her hand. "Damien?" Maya cried into the receiver. "Where the hell are you?" Damien's voice was a roar of panic. "My sensors picked up a jammer in the basement. Get upstairs. Lock the door. Do not talk to anyone. Do not look at anyone but Mr. Alvarez." "Forget the janitor," Damien shouted. "You are the target. Maya, they are circling." The elevator doors began to close, through the narrowing gap. Maya looked back down the hallway. Mr. Alvarez was gone, vanished into the shadows of the linen storage. But outside, through the glass of the loading bay doors, the window of the black SUV rolled down. A figure sat in the passenger seat. Maya couldn't see a face, just a dark shape. The figure raised a camera with a long telephoto lens. Click. The shutter snap was audible even through the glass and the distance. The flash flared, blindingly bright in the dim basement. The elevator doors slammed shut, sealing Maya in. But the image was already taken. The enemy had her face, and they knew she was scared. The week that followed felt less like a span of 7 days and more like a slow, deliberate tightening of a noose. Riverton was usually Damien Viscari's playground. The city moved to the rhythm he set, breathing when he allowed it to breathe. But for the last 168 hours, the city had turned against him. It started with small things. A health inspector, who'd been on the Viscari payroll for 10 years, suddenly developed a conscience and shut down the Gilded Cage, Damien's most profitable nightclub, citing electrical violations that did not exist. 2 days later, a shipment of imported marble for the construction firm, which was actually housing high-end electronics moving off the books, was seized by federal agents at the docks. They knew exactly which crate to open. They knew exactly which manifest was forged. The silence in the Viscari organization was the worst part. When things went wrong, men usually shouted, "Now," they whispered. And the whispers were all about the girl. Maya felt the change in the air pressure every time she walked into a room. The bodyguards did not look at her with professional indifference anymore. They looked at her with suspicion. The staff at the penthouse stopped making small talk. Even the air conditioning seemed to hum with an accusation. Traitor. Leak. Liability. It culminated on a Thursday night at Amato's, a private Italian restaurant that had served the Viscari family since before Damien was born. The restaurant was closed to the public. The only sound in the dim, wood-paneled dining room was the clink of silver against china and the soft pouring of wine. Damien sat at the head of the table. He looked impeccable in a charcoal suit, but the tension in his shoulders was visible to anyone who knew where to look. Maya sat to his right, her hand resting on the white tablecloth. Cold and untouched, across from them sat Uncle Sal, the oldest living member of the outfit's inner circle. He was a man who ate with precise, surgical movements. Next to him was Luca, Damien's cousin, looking relaxed and sipping a glass of Barolo as if the world wasn't burning down around them. The antipasto had been cleared, but no one was eating the main course. It is a bad week. "Damien," Uncle Sal said, slicing a piece of veal. "A very expensive week. $3 million in lost product. Another $500,000 in bribes to keep the club license from being revoked permanently." "I am handling it," Damien said. His voice was calm, but it had a razor edge. "Are you?" Sal asked, not looking up from his plate, "because the word on the street is that the feds didn't just get lucky at the docks. They had a schedule. They knew the route. We have a rat," Luca said softly. He swirled his wine, looking thoughtful. "A rat who sleeps very close to the head of the table." Maya stiffened. She felt the blood drain from her face. She looked at Damien, waiting for him to shut them down, to defend her as he had promised he would. Damien stared at his cousin. "Watch yourself." "Luca." "I am just looking out for the family," Luca replied with a shrug. He looked at Maya, offering a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "No offense." "Maya, but you are the new variable. Before you, the Viscari ship was watertight. Now, we are taking on water fast. A leak is a leak. It doesn't matter if it is malicious or just careless pillow talk." "I haven't told anyone anything," Maya said, her voice shaking slightly despite her best efforts to sound strong. "I don't even know the shipping schedules. Damien never tells me." Luca raised an eyebrow. "You don't need to know the schedule to leave a phone line open, or to have a conversation in a room that is compromised." "Enough," Damien said. He put his fork down. It clattered loudly. "We are not doing this here." Sal wiped his mouth with a linen napkin. "We have to do this here. Damien, you are the boss, but you are acting like a man in love, not a man in charge. If the girl is the leak, you cut her loose. You show strength. If you don't, the Lachlan crew will think you are weak. And when they think you are weak, they attack." Maya felt the weight of their stares. They were weighing her life against their profits. She looked at Damien again, pleading silently. "Say something. Tell them I am innocent." Damien looked at her. For a second, she saw the conflict in his eyes, the desperate need to protect her warring with the crushing responsibility of his position. But before he could speak, a chime echoed through the room. It wasn't a text message, it was a notification sound that pinged on 4 different phones simultaneously. Luca pulled his phone out. Sal checked his Rory, standing by the door. Checked his... Damien didn't move. He stared at the center of the table. "What is it?" Damien asked softly. Luca looked at the screen, then at Damien. His expression was a masterpiece of feigned shock. "You need to see this." Damien took the phone. Maya leaned in, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. It was a video file. On the small screen, a grainy image played. It was Maya. She was sitting on the edge of the bed in the penthouse, the same angle as the photo from before, but this time, The image moved. In the video, Maya was holding a phone to her ear. Beside her, the blurred figure of the man in the leather jacket was leaning in, as if listening. The audio was crackly, distorted by static, but the voice was unmistakably hers. Tuesday at midnight. Pier 42. Keeps the logs in the safe. The video cut to black. The silence in the restaurant was absolute. It was the silence of a courtroom after a death sentence has been read. Maya stared at the phone, horror washing over her in a cold tide. "That is not real," she whispered. "I never said that. I have never been to Pier 42. The audio is spliced," Damien said. He was staring at the screen with an intensity that looked like he was trying to set the device on fire with his mind. "Listen to the cadence. The background noise cuts out between words. It looks real enough to the Lachlan crew," Sal said quietly. "And it looks real enough to our captains. This was sent to everyone. Damien, everyone." Damien looked up. He met Maya's eyes. He saw the truth in them, the panic, the confusion. He knew, in his gut, that the audio was faked. He could hear the digital artifacts, the unnatural pause before she said Tuesday. But he also looked around the room. He saw Rory's hand hovering near his jacket. He saw Sal's hard, unforgiving stare. He saw the waitstaff lingering in the shadows, listening. If he defended her now, blindly, he would lose the room. If he lost the room, he lost the outfit. And if he lost the outfit, he couldn't protect her from the wolves waiting outside. Damien stood up. He buttoned his jacket. "Go home," he said to Maya. His voice was flat, cold. "Damien?" Maya asked, her voice breaking. "Rory," Damien barked, not looking at her. "Take her back to the penthouse. Confine her to the guest suite. No phone. No internet." "Damien, look at me," Maya cried, grabbing his arm. "It is fake. You know it is fake." He pulled his arm away. He didn't shove her, but the rejection was violent in its restraint. He looked at her, and for a fleeting second, his eyes screamed an apology. "I have to. Trust me." But out loud, he said, "I need to clean up your mess. Get her out of here." Rory stepped forward, his face grim. "Let's go. Miss Lane." Maya let Rory lead her away, her legs feeling like lead. She looked back once. Damien was standing alone at the head of the table, surrounded by his family, looking at the phone like it was a grenade that had already gone off. 2 hours later, Maya was pacing the guest suite of the penthouse. Rory had taken her phone. The internet was cut. She was trapped in a glass tower, waiting for the verdict. She couldn't stay here. If Damien didn't figure it out, or worse, if the pressure from Sal broke him, she was done. She would disappear. She knew how these stories ended. She needed proof, real proof. She remembered Mr. Alvarez. The janitor had said he found suspicious wiring in the vent. He had been terrified. What if he had found more? What if he had kept something back to protect himself? She went to the door. It was locked from the outside. She ran to the service entrance in the laundry room. It was unlocked. Rory had been thorough with the main exits, but he forgot that the maid staff came through the back at night to change the linens. Maya slipped out into the service corridor. It was cold and smelled of industrial detergent. She took the freight elevator down to the basement, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She found Mr. Alvarez in the boiler room, sitting on a milk crate, eating a sandwich wrapped in foil. When he saw her, he nearly dropped his dinner. "Miss Lane," he hissed, standing up and checking the shadows behind her. "You are crazy to be here. They are watching the building." "I don't care," Maya said, grabbing his hands. Her grip was desperate. "Mr. Alvarez, please, that camera. They are using footage from it to frame me. They are going to kill me if I don't prove it is fake. Did you find anything else? Anything at all?" The old man looked at her. He saw the terror in her face, the way her hands shook. He looked at the door, then back at her. He sighed. A heavy, resigned sound. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, greasy velvet pouch. "I was going to throw it in the river," he whispered. "I was too scared." "What is it?" Maya asked. "I took the camera out of the vent that night, before you found it, just to look at it." "Mr. Alvarez explained rapidly, but there was a second piece, taped behind the drywall, a backup drive. And this. He opened the pouch. Inside was a small black USB stick and a secondary transmitter, smaller than the first. I think it was recording directly to this drive in case the signal failed. Mr. Alvarez said, "If the footage is on here, maybe it shows who put it there." Maya clutched the pouch to her chest. "Thank you." "Oh my God, thank you. We have to go, Mr. Alvarez said nervously. "You cannot go back up. If they see you with that." "I have to get to a computer," Maya said. "I know a place." "Mr. Alvarez said, "An internet cafe 3 blocks over. My grandson goes there. Come out the back." He led her through the labyrinth of pipes and machinery to a heavy steel door that opened into the alley behind the Viscari Tower. The night air hit Maya like a slap. It was raining, a cold, miserable drizzle that slicked the cobblestones. They stepped out, moving quickly toward the street. Tires screeched. A gray van, headlights off, tore around the corner of the alley. It slammed on its brakes, blocking their path. The side door slid open with a metallic rasp. 2 men jumped out. They wore ski masks and tactical vests. They didn't look like muggers. They moved like soldiers. "Get the girl," one of them shouted. Maya froze. "Run, Mr. Alvarez yelled. The old man, who had spent 40 years pushing a mop, threw himself at the first attacker. He slammed his shoulder into the man's gut. It didn't stop him, but it slowed him down. The attacker backhanded Mr. Alvarez with a pistol, sending him sprawling into a pile of wet cardboard boxes. "No!" Maya screamed. The second man lunged for her. He grabbed the sleeve of her coat. Maya twisted, the fabric tearing. She clutched the velvet pouch so hard her fingernails cut into her palm. She scrambled backwards, slipping on the wet pavement. The man grabbed her ankle, dragging her toward the open maw of the van. "Let me go!" she shrieked, kicking at his face. Suddenly, the alley exploded with noise. Gunfire. 3 sharp, distinct cracks. The man holding Maya's ankle yelled and let go, clutching his shoulder. Blood blossomed on his vest. Damien's shadow detail had arrived. Rory came sprinting from the end of the alley, his gun raised. Behind him was Noah, another one of Damien's most trusted guards. They hadn't been guarding her to keep her prisoner. They had been guarding her to lure out the threat. "Get down!" Rory roared. Maya rolled behind a dumpster just as the attackers returned fire. Bullets sparked against the brick wall above her head. The sound was deafening, a physical pressure in her ears. The street fight was brutal and short. The attackers, realizing they had lost the element of surprise, scrambled back toward the van. Rory shot out their back tire, but the driver gunned the engine, the rim sparking against the asphalt as they careened out of the alley. One of the attackers, the one Rory had shot, was left behind. Noah was on him in seconds, zip-tying his hands before he could reach for his weapon. Maya lay on the wet ground, gasping for air. The pouch was still in her hand, pressed against the asphalt. It was safe. Rory holstered his weapon and ran to her. He didn't look like a jailer anymore. He looked terrified. "Miss Lane, are you hit?" Rory demanded, checking her for wounds. I'm okay," Maya stammered. "Mr. Alvarez. Check Mr. Alvarez." Noah was already helping the old man up. Mr. Alvarez was bleeding from a cut on his forehead, but he was conscious. "We need to move," Rory said into his radio. "Package is secure. Attackers neutralized. Get the car. Now." The ride back up to the penthouse was a blur. Maya sat in the back of the car, shivering uncontrollably, wrapped in a blanket Rory had thrown over her. She refused to let go of the pouch. When the elevator doors opened into the penthouse, Damien was there. He looked like he had aged 10 years in the last hour. His jacket was gone, his sleeves rolled up, his hair wild. When he saw Maya, covered in alley grit and rain, a sound ripped out of his throat that was half sob, half growl. He crossed the room and fell to his knees in front of the chair she collapsed into. "Maya," he breathed, his hands hovering over her as if afraid to touch her injuries. She looked at him. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind a crater of exhaustion and anger. "You knew," she whispered. Her voice was raspy. "You had them follow me." "I couldn't let you be alone," Damien said, his voice thick with emotion. "I had to make the family think I cut you loose. It was the only way to make the rats show their faces. but I told Rory not to let you out of his sight. You used me as bait," Maya accused, tears finally spilling over. "I was almost dragged into a van. Damien, mister, Alvarez was hurt because you were playing chess with my life. I was trying to save your life," Damien shouted back, the fear exploding out of him. "Do you think I wanted this? Do you think I wanted to watch you walk out of that restaurant thinking I hated you? It tore me apart. Maya, I wouldn't have been in that alley if you had just trusted me enough to tell me the plan," Maya yelled, standing up. She swayed, dizzy. "I had to go find the proof myself because I thought you were going to let them kill me. I would burn this city to ash before I let them touch you." Damien swore. He stood up and grabbed her shoulders, not to shake her, but to hold her upright. He looked into her eyes, and the anger drained out of him, leaving only desperate relief. "I am sorry," he whispered, pulling her into him. "I am so sorry." Maya didn't fight him this time. She collapsed against his chest, her legs giving out. Damien caught her, wrapping his arms around her so tightly she could feel the buttons of his shirt pressing into her skin. They stood there in the middle of the room, swaying slightly. Damien buried his face in her wet hair, kissing the top of her head, her temple, her ear. "I have you," he murmured, over and over again. "I have you." He pulled back just enough to look at her face. His hands came up to frame her cheeks, his thumbs wiping away the streaks of dirt and tears. He looked at her features one by one, her eyes, the curve of her nose, her mouth, as if he were memorizing them, terrified that if he blinked, she would be gone. "You are safe," he said, kissing her forehead. Maya closed her eyes, leaning into his touch. Her anger was still there, a hot coal in her chest, but it was being smothered by the overwhelming need for his warmth. She tangled her fingers in his shirt, pulling him closer. "I found it," she whispered against his chest. "What?" Damien asked, stroking her back. "The proof," she said. She held up the velvet pouch. "Mister, Alvarez found a backup drive." Damien went still. He looked at the pouch in her hand. Then he looked at Ethan, who was standing quietly by the server rack in the corner of the room. "Ethan," Damien said, his voice shifting from lover to killer in a heartbeat, "bring the laptop." They moved to the coffee table. Damien sat next to Maya, his arm heavy around her shoulders, refusing to let go. Ethan took the USB drive from the pouch with a pair of tweezers and plugged it into his air-gapped laptop. The screen flickered. A file directory popped up. "It is raw data," Ethan said, typing rapidly. "Unencrypted. This isn't just the footage they leaked. This is the master file." He clicked on a video file. It showed Maya's room, but Maya wasn't in it. Instead, the camera angle shifted. Someone was adjusting it. A hand came into the frame, a hand with a distinctive gold signet ring. Then the face appeared. It was Luca. He was laughing, talking to someone off camera. Angle is good. Luca's voice came through the speakers, clear and undistorted. "Make sure the audio splice is ready. We need her to say shipment. And Tuesday. I have the recordings from her phone calls to her florist. We can chop it up." Ethan clicked out of the video and opened a subfolder hidden deep in the drive's architecture. The folder was named simply Lukav. Inside were hundreds of files. Chat logs with the Lachlan crew, blueprints of the warehouse where the shipment was seized, and a schedule of payments labeled "Hit on Maya Lane." Damien stared at the screen. His face was a mask of stone, but his eyes were burning with a cold, terrifying fire. He didn't say a word. He just tightened his grip on Maya's shoulder until his knuckles turned white. The traitor wasn't a ghost. It was his blood, and now he had the weapon to end him. The air in the penthouse was stale, recycled through vents that now looked like menacing eyes to everyone in the room. On the coffee table, the laptop screen glowed with a harsh, blue light, casting long shadows against the walls. Ethan Cole typed a final command, his fingers moving across the keyboard with a frantic, staccato rhythm. He hit the enter key and stepped back, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Watch," Ethan said. His voice was barely a whisper. Damien sat on the edge of the leather sofa, his elbows resting on his knees, his hands clasped so tightly that the knuckles were white. Maya sat beside him, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the screen with a mixture of dread and nausea. The video player opened. It was footage from the hidden camera in the bedroom, the same angle that had been used to frame Maya. But this timestamp was from 3 weeks ago, long before the leaks began. The room on the screen was empty. Then, the door opened. 2 men walked in. They were not wearing masks. They were laughing. One of them was tall, wearing a maintenance uniform that was too tight across the shoulders. As he reached up to unscrew the vent cover, his sleeve rode up, revealing a distinct tattoo on his forearm, a jagged black crown of thorns wrapped around a dagger. "That is Mikos," Ethan said, pointing at the screen. "He's a mid-level runner for the Lachlan crew. I have seen his file." But it was the second man who sucked the oxygen out of the room. He was standing by the bed, supervising the installation. He was wearing a tailored suit, checking his watch, looking bored. He turned to face the camera, adjusting the angle of the lens with a gloved hand. It was Luca Viscari on the screen. Luca smirked. "Make sure the angle catches the pillows," he said. The audio from the speakers was crisp. "The boss will never see this coming. He's too busy playing house to look at the ceiling." Damien did not move. He did not breathe. He stared at the image of his own cousin, his blood, the man he had grown up with, the man he had trusted to watch his back, standing in his private sanctuary, plotting his destruction. Maya let out a small, strangled sound. She put a hand over her mouth. It wasn't just the betrayal that made her sick. It was the violation. Luca had stood right there. He had looked at her bed. He had turned her safe haven into a stage set for a tragedy, scripting her ruin while smiling at her across the dinner table. Damien stood up. The movement was slow, fluid, and terrifying. He walked to the window and looked out at the city lights. "I will kill him," Damien said. The tone was conversational, which made it infinitely worse than if he had screamed. "I will take him to the docks tonight. I will make him watch while I burn everything he owns, and then I will put a bullet in his heart." "No," Ethan said sharply. Damien turned. His eyes were black voids. "Do not tell me no." "Ethan, boss, you cannot just kill him," Ethan insisted, standing his ground. "Look at the narrative. The rumors are already out there. The older captains think Maya is the leak. The Lachlan crew is waiting for you to crack. If you kill Luca tonight, tomorrow morning the story will be that Damien Viscari murdered his own cousin to cover up his fiancée's crimes. You will look like a tyrant cleaning up a mess. The family will turn on you. The Lachlan crew will move in as liberators for the disgruntled captains. You lose everything." Damien's jaw worked. He knew Ethan was right. He hated it, but he knew it. "So what?" Damien snarled. "I let him live? I let him sit at my table?" "No," Ethan said. "We turn the trap around. We need him to confess, not to you, to them. We need him to reach out to the Lachlan crew and confirm the hit. We need to catch him handing over the keys to the kingdom." "How?" Maya asked, her voice trembling. Ethan looked at Damien. "We have to give him what he wants. Boss, he wants you to destroy Maya. He wants you to be the broken, angry lover who throws her to the wolves. If you do that, Luca will think he has won. He will get sloppy. He will call Mikos to celebrate, and I will be listening." Damien looked at Maya. The realization of what Ethan was suggesting settled over him like a heavy coat. "You want me to expose her?" Damien said. "Publicly." "It is the only way," Ethan said. "We have the annual gala at the Sapphire Club tomorrow night. All the captains will be there. Luca will be there. If you denounce her in front of everyone, Luca will believe it." Maya stood up, the blanket falling from her shoulders. "You want him to humiliate me in front of the people who already hate me? It is a play." "Maya," Ethan urged, "it is acting." "Is it?" Maya asked, looking at Damien. Damien walked back to her. He reached out to touch her arm, but stopped himself. His face was closing off, the walls coming up. He was slipping back into the role of the Dawn, the cold strategist. "It has to be real," Damien said quietly. "What does that mean?" Maya asked, stepping back. "It means I cannot tell you exactly what is going to happen," Damien said. His voice was tight. "If you know the plan, you will anticipate it. You are not an actor, Maya. If you look like you are waiting for a cue, Luca will see it. He is a predator. He smells fear. I need him to see real pain. Maya stared at him, incredulous. You want to hurt me on purpose? To trick him? I want to save your life, Damien snapped, the crack in his armor showing for a split second. If this fails, Maya, they kill you. Real bullets, not social embarrassment, death. I need you to be safe, even if it means you hate me for a few hours. Maya shook her head, tears pricking her eyes. It is not about hate, Damien. It is about trust. You are asking me to walk into a room full of sharks and bleed for you. I am asking you to trust that I will pull you out of the water, Damien said. Then tell me, Maya begged. She grabbed the lapels of his shirt. Please, if you have to act like you don't love me, at least tell me it is an act. Tell me right now that when you stand up there and destroy me, you don't mean it. Look me in the eye and promise me. Damien looked down at her. He wanted to. Every fiber of his being screamed at him to pull her close, to whisper the entire plan in her ear, to promise her that it was them against the world. But he thought about Luca. He thought about the eyes watching them. He thought about the possibility that the penthouse was still bugged with devices Ethan hadn't found yet. He couldn't risk it. If she wasn't convincing, she died. He gently removed her hands from his shirt. He stepped back. His face went blank, his eyes turning into polished obsidian. Get some sleep. Maya, he said coldly, we have a long night tomorrow. Maya felt like he had punched her in the chest. She stood there, mouth slightly open, waiting for the wink, the squeeze of the hand, the sign. He turned his back on her and walked toward the heavy oak doors of his study. Maya stood alone in the center of the room, the silence ringing in her ears. He hadn't promised. He hadn't told her it was a lie. And in the vacuum of his silence, the doubt began to bloom again. Dark and poisonous, the Sapphire Club was a monument to Vescari power. It was all gold leaf, black velvet, and crystal chandeliers that cost more than most houses in Riverton. Tonight, it was packed with the elite of the underworld. Men in $5,000 suits smoked cigars that smelled of earth and money, while women in glittering gowns laughed too loudly at jokes that weren't funny. Maya stood next to Damien near the main bar. She wore a dress of emerald green silk that Damien had chosen for her. It was beautiful, backless, and made her feel utterly naked. Damien had barely spoken to her all day. In the car, he had been silent, checking his phone, ignoring her attempts to talk. Now, standing beside him, she felt like a prop, a trophy that had lost its shine. Across the room, Luca was holding court. He looked radiant. He was laughing with Uncle Sal, gesturing with a champagne flute. When his eyes met Maya's, he offered a small, sad smile and raised his glass in a mock toast. To the end. His eyes seemed to say. Damien's grip on Maya's elbow was tight, almost bruising. Stay close, he muttered. Why? Maya whispered back, her voice brittle. So you can keep an eye on the traitor? Damien didn't answer. He looked at Ethan, who was positioned near the DJ booth, pretending to adjust the sound system. Ethan gave a barely perceptible nod. It was time. The music lowered. A spotlight hit the center of the stage. Damien stepped forward, pulling Maya with him. The room went quiet. This was the moment the boss addressed the family. Usually, it was to announce profits or new territories. Thank you all for coming, Damien said. His voice was amplified, booming through the club. It was steady, commanding. Tonight was supposed to be a celebration of our new construction contracts. He paused. He looked out at the crowd. He looked at Sal. He looked at Luca. But, Damien continued, his voice dropping an octave, becoming dangerous. We cannot build on a rotten foundation. Behind him, on the massive LED screen that usually displayed abstract geometric patterns, the image flickered. Static cut through the visual. A video started playing. It was the doctored footage. The room gasped. On the giant screen, 20 feet high, was Maya. She was sitting on her bed, the image grainy but clear. The blurred figure of the man was next to her. The audio boomed through the club's concert-grade speakers. Tell Lachlan the shipment is unguarded on Tuesday. Damien trusts me. He leaves the safe open. Maya froze. Her blood turned to ice. She stared at the screen. seeing her own face twisted into a lie, broadcast to 300 dangerous people. She turned to Damien. "Damien, that is not—" Damien didn't look at her. He looked at the screen, staring at it with feigned horror. Luca stepped forward from the crowd, his face a mask of concern. "Damien! Turn it off! Someone turn it off!" But nobody turned it off. It played on a loop. "Damien trusts me. Damien trusts me." Damien turned slowly to face Maya. The entire room held its breath. "You told me you were innocent," Damien said into the microphone. His voice echoed, cold and hollow. "Damien, please," Maya cried, reaching for him. "It is fake. You know it is fake." He stepped back, avoiding her touch as if she were filth. "I defended you," Damien said, his voice rising, filled with a theatrical rage that felt terrifyingly real. "I fought for you. I went against my own blood for you." He looked at Luca. "You were right, cousin." Luca bowed his head, looking somber. "I am sorry. Damien, I didn't want to be right." Damien turned back to Maya. He looked her in the eye. Maya searched his face for a sign, a twitch, a blink. Anything to tell her this was the plan. But Damien was a master of his world because he knew how to wear the mask. There was no softness in his eyes. Only the cold, dead stare of a mafia don cutting a liability. "My fiancé has betrayed me," Damien announced to the room. The words hung in the air like smoke. He pointed at the door. "Get her out of my sight," Damien ordered. "Damien," Maya screamed. The sound tore from her throat, raw and agonizing. 2 security guards, men she didn't recognize, not Rory or Noah, grabbed her arms. They weren't gentle. They hauled her back. "You promised," Maya yelled, fighting against them. "You promised you would believe me." Damien turned his back on her. He walked over to Luca, placing a hand on his cousin's shoulder. The room erupted into murmurs. The king had chosen his family over the outsider. The order was restored. Maya was dragged through the crowd. She saw faces she recognized, people she had planned parties for, people she had laughed with. They looked at her with disgust. She was a pariah. As the guards shoved her toward the exit, she felt a hand brush against hers in the crush of the crowd. It was Ethan. He appeared for a split second, bumping into her as the guards manhandled her past the DJ booth. "I'm sorry," Ethan muttered. He jammed something into her hand. It was small, hard and cold. "Keep moving," the guard barked, shoving Ethan aside. Maya clutched the object instinctively. It was the USB drive, the backup. She didn't have time to process it. The double doors of the club were kicked open and she was thrown out onto the sidewalk. She stumbled, the heel of her shoe snapping. She fell onto the cold concrete, scraping her knees. "Stay away from the Viscari family," the guard spat, looming over her. "If you come back, the boss says we don't bring you inside. We put you in the ground." The doors slammed shut. The muffled bass of the music resumed inside. Maya knelt on the pavement. The night was freezing. The wind cut through her thin silk dress like a knife. She was shaking, not just from the cold, but from the shock. He had done it. He had actually done it. She stood up slowly, her body aching. She looked at the closed doors of the club. Tears streamed down her face, ruining her makeup, leaving black streaks down her cheeks. She looked down at her hand. She was clutching the USB drive so hard her palm hurt. Why did Ethan give this to her? If Damien had cast her out, what good was the proof now? Unless Damien hadn't cast her out, unless this was the game. But the pain in her chest felt too real for a game. The look in his eyes had been too empty. She opened her small clutch purse and dropped the USB drive inside. Her fingers brushed her phone. The screen lit up, a text message. She picked it up, her hand trembling. The number was blocked. She opened the message. "Now you know what he really thinks. We can help you disappear. A car is waiting around the corner." Maya stared at the words. The text wasn't from Damien. It wasn't from Ethan. It was from the people who had made the video, the people who wanted to destroy Damien. They thought she was broken. They thought she was ready to turn. She looked around the empty street. Shadows stretched long and dark. She was alone. And for the first time since she met Damien Viscari, she didn't know if she was a player in his game or just a pawn he had sacrificed to save his king. The wind on the street corner cut through Maya Lane's silk dress as if the fabric were made of smoke. She stood shivering on the pavement, the heavy bass of the Sapphire Club vibrating through the soles of her broken heels. She was alone in the dark, cast out by the man who had promised to burn the world down for her. Her phone buzzed in her hand, the screen glowing with the message from the unknown number. "Now you know what he really thinks. We can help you disappear. A car is waiting around the corner." Maya stared at the words. The blue light illuminated the mascara streaks on her cheeks. It was a lifeline thrown into a drowning sea, promising escape, anonymity, and a fresh start. All she had to do was walk around the corner and get into the car. But Maya Lane was an event planner. She made her living by noticing the small details, the wrong shade of napkins, the hesitation in a vendor's voice, the wiring that didn't look right. And something about the timing of this text felt too precise, too rehearsed. She looked at the message again. "We can help you disappear." They didn't want to help her. They wanted to erase her. She deleted the message. She took a breath, the cold air stinging her lungs, and turned away from the corner where the car waited. She began to walk, limping slightly on her broken shoe, moving away from the Viscari Empire and into the shadows of the city. She could not go to Jenna. Jenna was innocent, a civilian. Bringing this darkness to her doorstep would be a death sentence. There was only one person who knew the truth, one person who had looked at her with pity instead of contempt. It took her 40 minutes to walk to the crumbling brick building on the edge of the heights where Mr. Alvarez lived. She had seen his address once on a payroll form she had helped organize for Damien's household staff. The lobby smelled of boiled cabbage and old floor wax. She buzzed the apartment number listed as Alvarez. "Jay." The intercom crackled. "Who is it?" "It is Maya," she whispered, her voice barely carrying over the static. "Maya Lane. Please." There was a long silence, long enough for Maya to think he had left the receiver hanging. Then the buzzer sounded, a harsh, welcoming buzz. She found his apartment in the basement level. It was small, a single room with a kitchenette, illuminated by the blue flicker of an old television set. Mr. Alvarez opened the door in his bathrobe, his face lined with worry. "Miss Lane," he gasped, ushering her inside and locking the bolt in the chain behind her. "You should not be here. It is not safe." "I have nowhere else to go," Maya said, her strength finally failing her. She sank onto the arm of his worn floral sofa. "Just for a few nights. Please. I just need to figure out what to do. Mister?" Alvarez looked at the door, then back at her. He saw the bruises on her arm where the guards had grabbed her. He saw the terror in her eyes. He nodded slowly. "You take the couch," he said gently. "I will make tea." 5 miles away, in the glass-walled prison of his penthouse office, Damien Viscari stood staring out at the Riverton skyline. The city looked different tonight. It looked sharper, colder. The office was dark, save for the amber glow of the whiskey glass in his hand. He hadn't taken a sip in an hour. Damien's phone sat on the desk. He wanted to pick it up. He wanted to call her. The urge was a physical ache in his chest, a tightening of his lungs that made it hard to breathe. He needed to know she was warm. He needed to know she wasn't crying, but he couldn't. Ethan sat in the corner, typing silently on a tablet. "Is she secure?" Damien asked. His voice was gravel, rough from the shouting he had done at the club. "Noah says she's at the janitor's apartment," Ethan replied without looking up. "Ground floor unit. He has a line of sight on the entrance and the alley. No one goes in or out without him seeing." Damien nodded, his jaw clenching. "Good, keep the distance. If she spots him, the performance falls apart." Damien turned back to the window. He closed his eyes, and the image of Maya's face as the guards dragged her away played on a loop in his mind. The betrayal in her eyes hadn't been acted. The hurt had been real. He had broken her heart to save her life, and the weight of that choice was crushing him. He thought about the first time he had seen her. It was 3 years ago. She was running a charity gala at one of his hotels. The caterer had bailed an hour before service, and the florist had delivered dead lilies. Most people would have panicked. Damien had watched from the balcony as Maya, in a dress she had clearly bought off the rack, marched into the kitchen, rallied the sous chefs, and somehow arranged a buffet that looked intentional. She was fierce. She was competent, you denunce. And when she had looked up and caught him watching her, she hadn't flinched. She had glared at him for being in her way. He had fallen in love with her fire before he even knew her name. Across the city, in the dim light of the basement apartment. Maya curled up on the lumpy sofa under a scratchy wool blanket. The smell of the room, old paper, peppermint tea, and damp concrete was so different from the crisp, expensive scent of the penthouse. She couldn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling, where a water stain looked like a map of a country that didn't exist. She thought about Damien, not the monster who had thrown her out of the club, but the man who had sat on the floor of her apartment on their third date, helping her put together an IKEA bookshelf because she was too stubborn to hire someone. She remembered the way he had laughed, a deep, rumbling sound that made his eyes crinkle at the corners. When he installed the shelf backward, it was the first time she had seen the boy beneath the boss. It was the first time she had realized that his ruthlessness was a coat he wore, not the skin he was born in, or so she had thought. How could that man be the same one who stood on a stage and called her a traitor? Longing and anger coiled together in her stomach, a knot she couldn't untie. She missed him. She hated him. She wanted him to burst through the door and save her. She wanted to slap him for abandoning her. The next morning broke gray and dreary. Rain slicked the pavement outside the high, narrow windows of the basement apartment. Mr. Alvarez made toast on a hot plate. He looked more tired than usual, his movements slow and pained. "I have to tell you something. Miss Lane," he said, setting a plate down on the small coffee table. Maya sat up, wrapping the blanket around her shoulders. "What is it?" "The men who threatened me. Mr. Alvarez said, staring at his hands, "the ones who said they would hurt my grandson. I know who they work for." Maya went still. "You said you didn't know. I was scared," he admitted, "but I saw the logo on their pay stubs once, when they came to the maintenance office to intimidate the manager. They work for Vane Construction." Maya frowned. "Vane? That is a subcontractor. They pour concrete for the city projects. They are owned by the Lachlan crew." "Mr. Alvarez said, "everyone in the union knows it. They are the ones who put the camera in." And he hesitated, reaching into the pocket of his cardigan. "I did not give you everything yesterday." Maya's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean, Mr.?" Alvarez pulled out a small, silver flash drive. It was different from the black USB Ethan had given her. It was battered, the casing scratched. "When I found the camera, I found this tape behind the drywall," he whispered. "I think it was a backup for the transmitter. I kept it because I thought maybe if they came for me, I could trade it for my life. But now they will just kill us both." Maya took the drive. Her hands were shaking. "Do you have a computer, mister?" Alvarez nodded toward a dusty laptop sitting on a stack of magazines. "It is old, but it works." Maya plugged the drive in. The fan whirred loudly, struggling to boot up the files. She clicked on the folder. There were videos, dozens of them, raw footage from her room, but also audio files recorded from inside the room before the camera was fully installed. She clicked a file labeled install_log_04. The screen remained black, but the audio was crystal clear. It was Luca's voice. "Once the girl is discredited, Damien is going to spiral," Luca said. The sound of tools clicking against metal could be heard in the background. "He is emotional. He thinks with his heart. When the elders see him protecting a rat, they will call for a vote of no confidence." Another voice, deeper and rougher, answered, "And the Lachlan crew moves in?" "Exactly," Luca replied. "We divide the territory. I take the construction contracts, Lachlan takes the ports, and Damien retires early." Maya felt bile rise in her throat. "Retires early." It was a euphemism for a shallow grave. She clicked another file. Contingency_plan_B. This one was terrifyingly recent. The timestamp was from 2 days ago. "If the framing doesn't work," Luca's voice hissed, We take her, grab her off the street, make it look like she ran away to join the enemy. Damien will tear the city apart looking for her, and we will lead him right into an ambush." Maya sat back, the blood draining from her face. It wasn't just about discrediting her. It was a coup. Luca was selling out his own blood to the Lachlan crew, and he was using her as the wedge to split the Viscari Empire open. And Damien didn't know the full extent of it. He knew Luca was a traitor, but he didn't know about the ambush. He didn't know they were planning to kill him when he came looking for her. She looked at the text message she had received last night. "We can help you disappear." It had been the start of Plan B. They were trying to lure her into the van. Maya stood up. The blanket fell to the floor. "I have to go back," she said. "Miss Lane." "No, Mr. Alvarez cried. "They will shoot you on sight." "I am not going back to the penthouse," Maya said, her voice hardening. "I need to get this to Ethan. Damien is walking into a trap. If he tries to meet Luca or the Lachlan crew without knowing this, he dies." She pulled out her phone. She'd kept it off, terrified of being tracked, but now she didn't care. She turned it on and typed a text to Ethan. "I have the rest of the proof. Luca is planning to kill Damien. Meet me. Neutral ground." She sent coordinates for an old industrial park near the river, a place she had scouted for a warehouse party months ago. It was open, with multiple exits. She looked at Mr. Alvarez. "You don't have to come." The old man stood up. He straightened his cardigan. His back was stooped, but his eyes were steady. "You are a good woman, Miss Lane. And Mr. Damien, he has always paid for my grandson's asthma medication. I will drive you. My truck is in the back." The industrial park was a graveyard of rusted metal and abandoned dreams. Fog rolled off the river, wrapping around the shipping containers stacked like giant, colorful bricks against the gray sky. Mr. Alvarez's beat-up pickup truck rumbled to a halt near the designated meeting point. Maya clutched her purse, feeling the hard edges of both drives inside, the one Ethan gave her, and the silver one from Mr. Alvarez. "Where is he, Mr.?" Alvarez asked, scanning the empty lot. "He said he is 5 minutes out," Maya said, checking her phone. The silence of the yard was heavy. A seagull cried out overhead, a lonely, piercing sound. Then, the sound of tires on gravel. Maya turned, relief flooding her chest. But it wasn't Ethan's sleek sedan. A dark gray van, identical to the one from the alley, tore around the corner of a stack of containers. It didn't slow down. It screeched to a halt 20 feet away, blocking their exit. The side doors flew open. Men with tactical gear and assault rifles poured out. There were 6 of them. "Go!" "Mr. Alvarez yelled. He shoved Maya toward the gap between 2 orange shipping containers. Maya stumbled, her heels scraping on the gravel. She looked back. Mr. Alvarez didn't run. He stood by the truck, putting himself between the gunman and Maya. He raised his hands, shouting, "She is not here. A gunshot cracked through the air. It wasn't a warning shot. Mr. Alvarez spun around, clutching his shoulder. A bloom of red expanded rapidly on his beige cardigan. He crumpled to the ground, groaning. "No!" Maya screamed. She started to run back to him, but a bullet sparked against the metal container inches from her head. "Run! Mr. Alvarez choked out from the ground. Maya turned and sprinted. She ran into the maze of containers, her heart hammering against her ribs like a sledgehammer. She could hear heavy boots pounding the gravel behind her. "There she is!" a voice shouted. "Flank her! Cut her off at the river!" Maya ducked left, scrambling over a pile of rotting pallets. She clutched her purse to her chest. She couldn't let them take the drives. If they took the drives, Luca won, and Damien died. She turned another corner and skidded to a stop. A man was blocking her path. He was huge, wearing a balaclava, a rifle slung across his chest. He grinned beneath the mask. "End of the road, princess," he snarled. He stepped forward, grabbing her arm. He slammed her against the corrugated metal of a container. The impact knocked the wind out of her. "You ruined everything," he hissed, leaning in close. "You were supposed to just disappear. Now we have to make it messy." Maya struggled, kicking at his shins, but he was like a wall of brick. He raised a hand to strike her. Suddenly, a shadow detached itself from the top of the container above them. Noah dropped. Damien's guard landed silently behind the attacker. In one fluid motion, he drove the butt of his pistol into the man's temple. The attacker crumpled without a sound. Noah grabbed Maya, pulling her behind a stack of crates. He was breathing hard, his face streaked with grease. "Stay down," Noah ordered. His voice was calm, professional. "Noah?" Maya gasped. You were following me?" "Boss's orders," Noah said, checking the magazine of his gun. "Never let you out of sight, Maya." Gunfire erupted from the other side of the containers. The other attackers were closing in. "They are pinning us down," Noah yelled into his radio. "Need extraction, now!" From the distance, a voice echoed over the yard. It was amplified. Arrogant. "Give her up!" "Noah, it was Luca." Maya peered through a crack in the crates. Luca Vascari was standing by the van, a pistol in his hand, looking like a king surveying his battlefield. "Take her alive," Luca shouted to his men. "I want her to see Damien die before I finish her." Maya's blood ran cold. He was here. The mask was fully off. Noah fired 2 shots around the corner, keeping the approaching men at bay. "We can't hold them. Miss Lane, there are too many. We have to try," Maya whispered, clutching the drives. Then, a sound cut through the chaos. It started as a low growl and escalated into a high-pitched scream of an engine, pushed to its absolute limit. A black sports car drifted around the corner of the warehouse row, tires smoking, moving so fast it was a blur. It smashed through a wooden barricade, sending splinters flying. It was Damien. The car screeched to a halt in the center of the open lot, placing itself directly between Luca's men and the containers where Maya was hiding. The doors flew open. Damien stepped out. He wasn't wearing a suit. He was wearing a tactical vest over a white shirt, an assault rifle in his hands. His face was a mask of pure, unadulterated fury. Behind him, 2 SUVs roared into the lot, spilling out Rory and a dozen Vascari soldiers. Sirens began to wail in the distance. Police, fire, or maybe more trouble. Maya crouched behind the crates, clutching the flash drive so tightly her knuckles turned white. The air smelled of burnt rubber and gunpowder. The game was over. The war had begun. The industrial yard had dissolved into a chaotic symphony of violence. Bullets sparked against the corrugated steel of the shipping containers, sending showers of hot metal raining down onto the wet gravel. The air smelled of burnt rubber, ozone, and the coppery tang of fear. Damien Vascari moved through the firestorm like a man possessed. He didn't flinch as a round tore into the wooden pallet beside him. His eyes were locked on a narrow gap between 2 orange containers where he had seen a flash of familiar silk and the horrifying stain of red. "Maya!" he roared, his voice cracking over the sound of automatic fire. He dove behind the cover of a rusted forklift, sliding on the slick stones until he was just feet away from her. Maya was crouched in the dirt, her knees drawn up to her chest. She was trembling, her face pale and streaked with mud. There was blood on the sleeve of her dress, bright, fresh crimson. Damien felt his heart stop. The world narrowed down to that stain. He scrambled the last few feet, ignoring the shouts of his men and the returning fire from Luca's crew. He reached for her. Maya flinched. It was a violent, instinctive recoil. She jerked away from his hand as if he were burning her, pressing her back against the cold steel of the container. Her eyes were wide, filled not just with fear of the bullets, but fear of him. The look shattered him more than any weapon could. "Maya, you are hurt," Damien choked out, reaching again, slower this time. "It is Mr. Alvarez's blood," she spat, her voice shaking with adrenaline and fury. "Not mine. No thanks to you." Damien froze. The bullets were pinging off the metal above their heads, deafeningly loud, but the silence between them was heavier. "I never stopped believing you," he said. The words came out in a rush, urgent and desperate. "I knew the video was fake the second I saw it. I knew the audio was spliced. Then why?" Maya shouted, tears cutting tracks through the grime on her cheeks. "Why did you throw me out? Why did you let them drag me away?" "Because I needed them to believe I had broken," Damien yelled back, leaning over her to shield her body with his own as a fresh volley of gunfire erupted. "If I had defended you, Luca would have killed you immediately to silence the leak. I had to make you look like trash so he would get careless. I had to make him think he had won. He underestimated how much the truth would sting. He thought explaining the strategy would fix the wound, but he saw the betrayal deepen in her eyes. You don't get to decide how I get sacrificed, Maya screamed, shoving at his chest. You don't get to play God with my life. Damien, I was alone. I was on the street thinking you hated me. I was trying to keep you alive, and you almost got me killed. Maya reached into her purse. Her hands were shaking violently, but her grip was iron. She pulled out the silver flash drive Mr. Alvarez had given her. She thrust it into his chest, hitting his tactical vest hard. Take it, she commanded, her voice breaking. What is this? Damien asked, staring at the small device. It is everything, Maya sobbed, wiping her nose with her bloody sleeve. It is Luca. It is the Lachlan crew. It is the recording of him planning to kill you. If you don't use this to clear my name, I swear to God, Damien, I will go to the police myself. I will burn your whole world down to get my life back. Damien looked at the drive, then at her. He saw the fire in her eyes, the same fire that had captivated him years ago. She wasn't a damsel. She was a survivor, and he had almost extinguished that light by trying to protect it too tightly. We are going to clear your name, Damien vowed. Right now, he grabbed her hand, not the wrist, not a capture, but a partnership. Ethan is in the foreman's office, Damien said, pointing toward a small brick building in the center of the yard. We have to get there. Can you run? Maya nodded, gripping his hand back. Yes. On my count, Damien said, raising his rifle. 1, 2, 3. They sprinted. They moved as one entity, weaving through the maze of crates and machinery. Noah and Rory provided covering fire, suppressing the shooters near the van. Bullets kicked up geysers of dirt around their feet, but they didn't stop. They crashed through the door of the foreman's office, tumbling onto the linoleum floor. Ethan was already there, hunched over a bank of equipment he had set up on a folding table. Cables snaked everywhere. Ethan, Damien barked, hauling Maya to her feet. Ethan looked up, his face pale. Boss, the signal is weak. I am trying to... Damien slammed the silver flash drive onto the table. Upload it. All of it. Ethan grabbed the drive. He didn't ask questions. He plugged it in. His fingers flew across the keyboard. Where is this going? Maya asked, leaning over the table, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Everywhere, Damien said grimly, checking the magazine of his rifle. The outfit elders. The press. The district attorney. Maya looked at him, shocked. The DA? Damien, that will implicate you too. Damien looked at the door, listening to the approaching footsteps of Luca's men. I don't care. I am done hiding in the shadows. Boss, we have a problem, Ethan shouted. The upload speed is crawling. I need 2 minutes. We don't have 2 minutes, Rory yelled from the window, firing a burst into the darkness. They are breaching the perimeter. The front door of the office exploded inward. Wood splinters flew like shrapnel. Damien shoved Maya behind a heavy metal filing cabinet just as Luca Vascari strode into the room. He wasn't alone. 2 men with shotguns flanked him. Luca looked deranged, his suit torn, his eyes wild with the ecstasy of violence. End of the line, cousin, Luca roared. Raising his pistol, Damien stepped out from cover, his own weapon raised. It is over. Luca. The elders know. They don't know anything until I tell them. Luca sneered. He looked at the laptop, then at Maya cowering behind the cabinet. Look at you. You threw away an empire for a girl with a cheap ring. You are weak. Damien, you were always weak. You mistake mercy for weakness, Damien said, his voice deadly calm. Mercy is for the dead. Luca laughed. He raised his gun to shoot Damien in the chest. Damien's finger tightened on the trigger, but before he could fire, movement flashed in his peripheral vision. One of Luca's men, seeing Damien distracted, swung his shotgun toward him from the flank. No! Maya lunged. She didn't think. She didn't calculate. She saw a gun on the floor, dropped by Rory during the initial breach, and she grabbed it. She rose from behind the cabinet, her hands trembling uncontrollably, and pointed the heavy weapon at the flanker. Drop it, she screamed. The gunman froze, startled by the sight of the terrified woman in the silk dress holding a Glock. It was enough of a distraction. Rory spun and dropped the man with a single shot to the leg. Chaos erupted in the small room. Damien fired, hitting the second gunman. Luca screamed in rage and fired at Damien, the bullet grazing Damien's shoulder. Damien didn't stumble. He dropped his rifle and tackled Luca. The two cousins, blood and bone of the same dynasty, crashed into the desk, sending the laptop skidding. They hit the floor in a tangle of limbs and fury. Fists connected with flesh. It was brutal, primal, and stripped of all the glamour of the mafia world. It was just two men trying to kill each other in the dirt. Luca was younger, but Damien fought with the desperation of a man who had everything to lose. He pinned Luca, landing a heavy blow to his jaw. "Shoot him!" Luca screamed to his remaining men outside. "Burn it down!" Suddenly, a sound cut through the violence. It wasn't a gunshot, it was a chime, then another, and another. Ethan's laptop let out a cheerful ping. Then Luca's phone, lying on the floor where it had fallen, lit up, then Damien's phone, then Rory's. The sound rippled out from the office, echoing across the city. Ethan slammed his hand on the table. "It is done. The broadcast is live." Luca froze beneath Damien. He craned his neck to look at his phone screen. On it, crystal clear. Played the video of Luca standing in Maya's bedroom. "Damien will lose leverage with the elders. I take the construction contracts." The color drained from Luca's face. It wasn't just on his phone. Across Riverton, phones were lighting up. The elders in their social clubs, the journalists chasing the scandal, the police scanners, the evidence of the frame-up, the treason and the murder plot was now public record. You ruined it," Luca whispered, his voice trembling with shock. "You ruined yourself," Damien panted, blood dripping from a cut on his brow. Luca's expression shifted from shock to nihilistic despair. He reached for a backup pistol tucked in his ankle holster. "Damien!" Maya screamed. Noah and Rory were faster. They didn't shoot to kill. They stepped forward and kicked the gun from Luca's hand, pinning him to the floor. Damien stood up, wiping the blood from his face. He looked down at his cousin. Luca lay there, disarmed, wounded, and utterly defeated. "Finish it," Luca spat, glaring up at him. "Be a Viscari. Put a bullet in my head." Damien raised his gun. The room held its breath. Maya watched him, her hand pressed over her mouth. She knew the code, she knew the rules. Treason meant death. But Damien looked at Maya. He saw the horror in her eyes. He saw the woman who had stood in front of a shotgun to save him. He looked back at Luca. "We are done doing this in the dark," Damien said quietly. He holstered his gun. "Tie him up." Damien ordered Noah, "Leave him for the police." "The police?" Luca laughed, a hysterical, broken sound. "You're calling the cops? You are the Dawn." "Not anymore," Damien said. Sirens began to wail, loud and close. Blue and red lights flashed against the shattered windows of the office. Damien walked over to Maya. She was still holding the gun, her knuckles white. He gently placed his hand over hers, guiding the barrel down until she released it. "It is over," he whispered. Maya looked at him, her eyes searching his face. "You gave up the family." "I chose my family," Damien corrected, pulling her into his arms. The hospital corridor was stark white and smelled of antiseptic, a sharp contrast to the grime of the industrial yard. It was 3 a.m. Damien sat on a plastic chair, his shoulder bandaged. He had refused a room. Maya sat next to him, her dress ruined, wearing an oversized hospital scrub top they had given her. "Mr. Alvarez is out of surgery. A nurse told them, passing by. He's stable. He's asking for his grandson." Damien let out a breath he felt like he had been holding for a week. He nodded to the nurse. "Make sure the grandson is brought here. Private transport. And put a guard on the door. Police detail." He turned to Maya. They sat in silence for a long time. The adrenaline had faded, leaving behind a raw, aching exhaustion. "I am sorry," Damien said. He didn't look at her. He looked at the floor. "I am not going to give you excuses," he continued, his voice low. "I thought I could control everything. I thought if I moved the pieces on the board just right, I could keep you safe without you ever having to bleed, but I was arrogant." Maya turned in her seat to face him. "You hurt me, Damien. When you said those words at the club, I felt like I died." "I know," Damien whispered. "I saw it in your face. It is going to haunt me until I die." Maya reached out and took his hand. His skin was rough, stained with ink and leftover grease. "I love you," she said softly. Damien's head snapped up, but Maya continued, her voice firming. "I cannot live in a cage. I cannot live in a world where you make decisions about my life without asking me. I cannot be a pawn. Damien, not even a queen. I need to be a partner." Damien turned his hand over, interlacing his fingers with hers. "I am dismantling it," he said. "The outfit. I gave the DA the drives. I am trading everything, the routes, the contacts, the territory, for immunity for you and a plea deal for myself. I am keeping the legitimate assets, the security firm, the real estate, but the rest, it is gone." Maya stared at him. "You are giving up power? Power almost cost me you," Damien said. "It was a bad trade." He leaned forward, resting his forehead against hers. The contact was electric. It wasn't sexual. It was a desperate, life-affirming connection. Maya closed her eyes, tears leaking out to mix with the grime on her cheeks. She brought her hands up to cup his face, her thumbs brushing over his cheekbones. Damien let out a shuddering sigh, his hands coming up to grip her waist, clutching the fabric of the scrub top. "I thought I lost you," he murmured against her skin. "You almost did," she whispered back. They kissed. It was slow, salty with tears, and deep. It was a kiss of forgiveness, but also a seal on a new contract. There was no dominance in it, no possession, just two people clinging to each other in the aftermath of a storm, rediscovering the rhythm of their heartbeats. Maya relaxed against him, feeling the solid, steady thump of his heart, knowing that for the first time. There were no secrets between them, no cameras, no scripts, just them. Epilogue. 6 months later, the autumn leaves were turning gold in Riverton. The city felt different. The headlines about the Vescari collapse had finally faded from the front pages, replaced by local politics and sports. Damien Vescari adjusted his tie in the mirror of the hallway. It was a simple tie, not silk. He looked tired, but lighter. The plea deal had been grueling, months of depositions, asset seizures, and threats from the remnants of the underworld, but he had survived. He was now the CEO of Vescari Security Solutions, a high-end consultancy firm that specialized, ironically, in privacy protection and counter-surveillance. He walked into the kitchen. It was a smaller house, a renovated colonial in the suburbs. There were no armed guards at the gate, just a very good alarm system that Damien had installed himself. Maya was at the island, looking over seating charts for her upcoming gala. It was a fundraiser for victims of digital stalking. Her business was booming, her waiting list months long. Mr. Alvarez sat at the breakfast table, sipping coffee. His arm was still stiff. But he smiled as he watched a video on his phone of his grandson graduating from high school, tuition fully paid by an anonymous scholarship fund. Damien kissed the top of Maya's head. "I am heading to the office." "Don't be late," she murmured, circling a flower arrangement on her chart. "We have dinner with Jenna tonight. I will be there," he promised. That night, a storm rolled in off the river. Thunder rattled the window panes of the master bedroom. Maya stood by the dresser, changing into her pajamas. She paused, her hand hovering over the buttons of her shirt. Her eyes flicked involuntarily to the vent cover near the ceiling. The old fear was a ghost that sometimes walked through the walls. Damien, watching from the doorway, saw the hesitation. He didn't say anything. He walked to the nightstand and opened the drawer. He took out a screwdriver. He walked over to her and held it out. "Handle first. Check it," he said softly. Maya looked at the tool, then at him. She took it. Damien dragged the step stool over. Maya climbed up. She unscrewed the vent. She shone her flashlight inside. It was empty, just dust and galvanized steel. She checked the smoke detector. She checked the lamp. She checked the mirror. Empty, silent, private. She climbed down. She looked at Damien, and he was watching her, not with impatience, but with patience infinite enough to fill an ocean. "All clear?" he asked. Maya smiled. It was a genuine, radiant smile that reached her eyes. "All clear," she said. She tossed the screwdriver onto the bed. She stepped into his space, wrapping her arms around his neck. Damien pulled her in, his arms banding around her, lifting her slightly off the floor. They kissed as the thunder cracked overhead, a passionate, heated embrace that belonged only to them. The camera that had once violated her was gone, replaced by the only record that mattered, the memory of the night they chose trust over power and love over fear. Author's note: thank you so much for listening to "There's a Camera in Your Room," the janitor whispered. Then the mafia boss exposed his fiancée. Writing Damien and Maya's journey from paranoia to trust was an emotional ride, and I hope you enjoyed the twists and turns of their redemption. I would love to hear your thoughts on the ending. Did Damien make the right choice by giving up the outfit? And where are you listening from today? Please let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story, please make sure to subscribe to Mafia Romance Stories for more tales of dangerous love, intense passion, and hard-won happy endings. Until next time, stay safe and keep reading.